And in the Hebrew, we're going to start with the paragraph V'yesh Loimer. In the English, it's the complete form of 7, the last paragraph.
Extra.
Yes. It's not extra, it's actually, this was prepared for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you knew I'm gonna come?
What?
You knew I'm gonna come?
Yes. Ruach HaKodesh. V'yesh Loimer. ShebeShleima is the Mispar Sheva. Remember that we were speaking about 770. First, the Rebbe explained everything about the Shul, and then the Rebbe began to speak about Hashgacha Pratis, or what the name is, being that the name of something is its source of life and sustenance. And this Shul's name became 770. That's what you named it. And the address is 770. So, according to Torah, that everything is by divine providence, they ever spoke about the significance of that number, 770. That everything in the world is divided in 7 because of the 7 spheres. And then when it's more complete, down to the details, it's 70. And being that everything contains in it 10 different aspects, so when 70 is more complete in its details, it's 700. And that's where that comes from. The complete form of, we'll do it now the Hebrew English. Yeshlema. ShebeShleima is the Mispah Sheva. Now that we speak about the complete number 7, which is 770, the Mezes Gam Shleimus Avidaso Shirabeinu. This also alludes to the complete Aveda of our Rebbe, meaning the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Meshach Kol Yemei Chayav, throughout his whole life, which was Sheva Assyria Shonim. It was 7 decades. The Frierdiker Rebbe's life was 70 years. He was born in Tofresh Mem, which was 1880, and his Istalkus was in 1950. Yeah, 1950. At 70 years. And his service, his avodah was in this. It was completed. In other words, let me just step back for a second. There's a general rule in Torah, which is that the end is the culmination of everything. First of all, it comes down to halacha. Hakol holech achra chitim. Everything goes by the end, by where things are signed off. For example, there's a contract, and it's a business contract, and you take a look at the contract, and they're arguing about a certain condition, and you see in the middle of the contract it says one thing. At the end, the bottom line, it says differently. Which way do we go? Because both are in the contract. The halach is you go by the last line. What's at the end? The same thing when there are different opinions among sages, and then there are later sages that say something different, we go by the later sages. In other words, and especially according to Chassidus, the part that includes the entire structure is both places, the beginning and at the end. In other words, the beginning of a parsha, the beginning of a word, the beginning of something, and the last part of it. Yeah.
Is this the idea like the end is wedged in the beginning?
Right. Very good. There's this lashon. No, it's lashon b'seif, and the end is wedged in the beginning. In fact, the custom is, I don't know if everyone realizes why they're doing that, but the custom is, for example, if people make a siyum on a Gemara, on a parsha, the custom is always to find a connection between the beginning and the first pasuk or the last, the first mishnah and the last. I think one of the reasons are because our custom is that when we learn it, we don't say we finished the tractate. We say we finished one cycle and now we're going back to relearn it even better than before. And next time we're going back to learn it again, which means that we're always going back to the beginning. But spiritually, it's like the worlds. The highest world is connected to the lowest worlds. The highest sphere, which is Keser, is connected to Malchus, which is the lowest sphere. So therefore, same here. The Frierdiker Rebbe's life, when was it sort of When was it completed? When was the culmination of all the Avodah, everything he did in his life was in the last decade. And the last decade was also seven. It's the seventh decade. Decade in English is a 10-year period. Had you that? Look, Hashem did that.
Then what?
As a shanim is called a decade.
Ah. Okay.
So it was in the seventh. They were showing how everything is created as number 7. And what's number 7? Kol hashvim chavivim. 7th of the most precious, it says in Gemara. The 7th month, the 7th day of the week, the 7th year of the yearly cycles. Shaydeza nasis hashleimus, and through this, it brings the completion of our Avodah. Calls man meshach hagolos, the chol shivas aratza shebe'olam, in all 7 parts of the world. And we take of mamish, and then we are zeicha through that. Yosef adnei shenis yodei. That's the pasuk you brought that relates to the Friedrich of his name, Yosef or Osaf. That Hashem will once again stretch out his hand, gather together all the scattered Jews. Remember, we said Paratzta is the gematria 770. All of Paris, the Fanayim, that is Mashiach. He's called the one who breaks through barriers, Paris. So at first the Rebbe explained what 770 is all about, and then he goes to explain that it's related to the Avodah, the Friedrich Rebbe, who lived 70 years, and is Iker. In general, the Rebbe explains that the Friedrich Rebbe's life was divided into 3 parts. The first 10 years was mainly in Russia, where he was fighting with Mesiras Nefesh to keep Yiddishkeit alive, and he did all the underground network of Yiddishkeit. The second 10 years was in Poland and Latvia, but mainly Poland, where it was a different uphill battle. That was revealing Chassidus in a place which, generally speaking, did not accept the Chabad way of Chassidus, because the other Chassidus is very, very different. And the third decade was in America, from 1940 to 1950. But the Rebbe always says that's the last of his life and the last of his years of leadership. And this was the culmination of everything. This is a general concept, but in more recent times, that's on page 54, 55, the Chozan Itesa about Goshi Yisera B'tkufa Achreina. Recently, all this takes on much more significance. Why? The Aveda of Afotzes HaTeir VaYadas VaMionos Chutza, the Aveda of spreading Yiddishkeit, and the wellsprings of Chassidus, from Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, which is 770, this Aveda Hayleches V'Nimsheches U'V'Yeser Seis U'V'Yeser Oz. It's continuing to sort of grow and continue to spread more and more. As time goes on, the spreading of Chassidus, the spreading of Yiddishkeit becomes progressively stronger and bigger and more. La'achar Eser Shanim Achreis, even after the last 10 years of the Friedrich Rebbe's life here in this world. In fact, at this point, the Rebbe said that he's speaking, it's more than 40 years. From 1950 to 1990 is already 40 years. From Tafshin Yud to Tafshin Nun. And what's so significant about the number 40? In the Chumash it says, after the Jews were in the desert for 40 years, Beis Rabeinu said to them these words, now that you are gone through the 40 years, Nasan Hashem Lechem Leiv Lodas, Hashem gave you the heart to understand, Einayim Lireis, the eyes to see, was Naim Lishmaya, and the ears to hear. What does it mean? Everything you saw in the desert, all the miracles, Matan Torah, Kriyas Yamsuf, the man falling from Shemayim, the wellspring that traveled miraculously along with them, all the miracles you saw, the full understanding and appreciation of this is only now. What's now? So what it says, from this we learn a general klal, a principle. And when a teacher teaches his students, we're talking about like the Tanoim, Amoraim, the great tzaddikim, who had very deep wisdom, like we learned about in the Maimer. It would take 40 years for the student to eventually have full understanding of what was really hidden in his teacher's words. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling to the Yidden. when Hashem performed the miracles, of course it was a miracle, Bagashmis, but this was an incredible, unprecedented revelation of godliness. But only now that it's 40 years later, you can fully understand and fully appreciate everything that happened in the last 40 years. That's what Beis Rabeinu said to them. So they were saying similar here. After the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, 40 years have passed, and these 40 years we see the continuation of all the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So now we have the full understanding of it. Nimtza shebeis Rabbeinu hu b'chinas talpiyos tel shekol piyos peinim by. Sorry. Kol piyos peinim by yosem yevel shanim ad olam. They were saying now 770 has become like the source for where Yiddishkeit is spread to the whole world, is the source for where Torah and Mitzvah is spread, and the source where Chassidus is being spread. But from when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, which was 1940, and when the Sicha was being said, which was 1950, it's already 50 years, which 50 years has a very special significance in Torah. It's called Yovel. The Jubilee year is 50, which means 50 is a completion of cycles of years, more than 40, more than 30, and all other numbers. So what is the significance of 50? It's interesting. The Chumash, it says, one of the halachas about Yovel is that a slave, when Yovel comes, he goes free. But in the Chumash, it says that really a slave should go free even earlier. After 6 years, he goes free. But what if the slave says, I don't want to leave I like my master, I want to stay here, I want to be a slave. So he continues to be there, ad olam, which literally means forever. The Gemara says, no, ad olam means until Yovel. In other words, a period of 50 years is, figuratively speaking, like forever. It's such a complete number, it's as if this is like, you can't go more than that. So therefore, the fact that this is 50 years, so it means we still continue to see the influence of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Of course, never gives any credit to himself. So the fact that people are coming to 770, and the fact that 770 is a source of Torah and Yerushalayim and Chassidus to the world, it's all the Frierdiker Rebbe's accomplishment. And then I told you, the Rebbe once said, I'm just hands and feet. Through me, it's happening, but he's really doing it all. Yeah.
Like the 50 years, like the Rebbe was saying this in 1990, so 50 years since.
It was a little bit. It was really 1991. This actually came out as a pamphlet, but it was a few sichas together, and one of them was said in the 1991, I think. Yeah. It means
So,
more
like,
than 50 years.
He's saying like 50 years since the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America.
In other words, since 770 became this beacon of light for the world, it's already 50 years.
Thank you.
And this is something which is even this tail talpiyos is a word that the Gemara says applies to the Beis Hamikdash. And why is it called talpiyos? It means it's an elevation. Tail means a high, like a hill or a mountain, something that's higher. It's an elevation in which all mouths turn to it. The Beis Hamikdash was a place that everybody traveled to be by the Beis Hamikdash. So in our generation, this is the Tel Tafiyas. People from the whole world come. When we see, it's even more emphasized when we see we see that the numbers of Yidden that are coming to 770 is becoming progressively more and more and more. Even though it's only numbers, but thus saying Gemara that the beauty of the king and the glory of a king is when there are a lot of people. There's certain halachas. For example, reading the Megillah. Is it okay to read the Megillah at home or better to read in shul? Halachically, you can read it at home. If you know how to read the Megillah, you can read it at home. But it's better to read in shul. Why? Because of this principle. The glory of the king is greater when there are more people. So in other words, a king, if he's surrounded by 10,000 people, that brings out more glory. If there's only 10 people, he's still a king, but it doesn't bring out that kind of feeling. And Man Malka Rabbanan, the Gemara says, who are the real kings? The sages. B'frat Nasi Melech Hader, especially someone who's like the king or the Nasi of the generation. So the fact that they're all people adds more to his glory and to his greatness. And therefore there's been a need, lahagdil or laharchiv, to make 770 bigger and allow more people to broaden the building, more people could come here. Bad Lagdola Bar Chavash from the Pritzes Geder, Paratsta, Bigmatria 770, we're binyan by his Chodesh. To break through, and it's like rebuilding a new home. One of the things here, which is, I would say, is like a sort of an open Ruach HaKodesh. Yes, what do you want to say, Bailey?
I'm stuck on like the idea of the Jubilee. I get it on a basic level, and I also know that a tzaddik never says anything that doesn't have deep meaning. So I'm trying to figure out like why he's comparing it to a Jubilee rather than saying like 50 years. Like I see comparing the Hasidim to the slaves that don't want to stop serving their master.
No.
Is there?
No, it's about the time that in Torah, different numbers have different significance. Like number 10, a minyan is with 10, which means 10 is a certain sign of perfection, of completion, right? 100 is a certain number of completion. And in different areas, in the context of different things, different numbers are considered complete in that area. So, for example, the number 7 is completion because the weekly cycle is 7, even though there's another day after Shabbos, but that's a cycle of 7 all over again. So 50 is a complete cycle, is the completest cycle that you can get, is number 50. And that's what he's comparing it to, that we've gone to a complete cycle of 50 years of this building being the source. So the Rebbe is really saying here that this is becoming more and more, and people are coming, and therefore there's a need to make it bigger. And what I'm saying is that it's interesting, you're talking about 1991. You would imagine that a Sicha like this about 770 could have been said 5 years before, 10 years before, 20 years before. Why Dafke 1991? Because what?
So is there somehow connected with the with the changes in Soviet Union?
Changes in?
Soviet Union, like that Soviet Union? Soviet Union, yeah.
Oh, Soviet Union.
Soviet.
What does that have to do with 770? Why would the Rebbe speak about 770? Only because there were changes in Soviet Union.
No, because a lot of Jews were there. Now they're becoming free and able to move here, for example.
Okay, that's a thought.
It's just assumption. I actually don't know.
Neither do I. None of us know. We can't know. But one of the things which comes to mind is that when did the Rebbe speak about it? This was a few weeks. When did this come out? A few weeks before Chav Zayin Adar, when the Rebbe had the stroke. 2 months later, 2 years later, was Gimel Tammuz. These are the times, especially in some people's minds, therefore there's no need to come to 770 anymore. Like, what's the point? What am I coming for? Was there to see? Was there to hear? And even today, you might hear that from certain people. Yeah, I can go to but what's 770? Dafka at this time, literally weeks before Chav Zayin Adar, when everything started to go in that direction, Dafka then the Rebbe spoke about the fact that this is the place, and this is the source, and this will be the source until Mashiach comes, and this is a place where people should be coming. And in fact, there's a need to make the place bigger. And this is really what we see, an interesting thing, that there were never so many people coming to 770 like there are today. Of course, it grew gradually, but I don't know if you ever had a chance to see the upstairs of 770, where the original place where the Rebbe used to bring. It's not much bigger than this. Yeah, it's about twice the size of this room. That's what the Farbrengen was. All the men were there. Everybody was there. And there was a small little place. Then they went downstairs. Then they rebuilt it downstairs. They broke the walls once. They broke the walls a second time. Then they broke the walls all the way to Kingston Avenue, and it became bigger. And I remember the first time they broke the walls, and it was Tishri time. So they announced, the person who made the announcement said, and today, this year, the Hakafas, the dancing on Simchas Torah, is going to be in the big shul. So they ever said in the new shul. In other words, this is not the big shul that we're talking about. It's got to be bigger and bigger and bigger. So the Rebbe really wanted the shul to be bigger. Unfortunately, after Gimel Tammuz, it all stopped. The building stopped. They started, but it never continued. But the whole Sicha was given out for that purpose, that everybody should participate in building and expanding 770. So very often we find by the Rabbeim that they would speak about things because they saw the future, and that's when it was necessary to talk about that. Yeah.
This kind of helps me understand like the controversy in Crown Heights about like expanding 770 and whatnot. I want to ask your opinion about the tunnel situation.
Did you say controversy? We didn't talk about controversial things here in class,
I simply forgot about it. Why, I'm curious, like, why did the building stop after the old Thomas? Because like, a lot of other things that I've talked about, like, Shulgis didn't stop, like, all the mitzvah campaigns didn't stop, so why? Expanding 770.
Right. So that's the part that we're not going to talk about.
Okay.
But you're right. Not only shlichus didn't stop, there were never, ever so many shluchim ever like there are today. Before Gimel Tammuz, there were close to 5,000 shluchim all over the world the way there are today, which means all the things that the Rebbe basically promoted have become progressively bigger than ever before. And the same thing here with regards to 770. So I'm saying we find stories with the Rabbeim that before something happened, they spoke about it before, preparing us for what's going to take place, but they did it in a sort of hidden way, not in an open way, that if you understand, you realize that the Rebbe was telling us something regarding the future. We find stories with all the Rabbeim along those lines. So this is the same thing here. Based on what we said before, about the the greatness of 770, Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, this is the place that we can apply the words of the Gemara, Nasa Migdash B'Yashav Sham, that the Beis HaMikdash of Yerushalayim traveled to Chutz La'aretz in the time of Golus, and it settled in a specific spot in Golus. This is the spot that is the substitute for the original Beis HaMikdash of Yerushalayim. In fact, in this spot, the future Beis HaMikdash will first be revealed, and then from there it'll go from Golus, from Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, to Israel. And from there it'll go to Yerushalayim. I don't know if you ever heard this, but those who are unfortunately bent on criticizing Chabad and all the crazy things. So what we hear sometimes is that they don't believe that the Beis HaMikdash will be built in Yerushalayim. They say it's going to be in 770, and that's it. So they saw the Sicha, they heard about the Sicha, but didn't say what it says. The Rebbe doesn't say Chas v'Shalom something different than Halakha. Of course, Beis HaMikdash is going to be in Yerushalayim. But the Rebbe is saying the Beis HaMikdash, remember we learned that the spiritual Beis HaMikdash comes down to this world and settles in Yerushalayim. So the spiritual Shechina that's going to be in the Beis HaMikdash settles first in the shul that's in Chutz La'aretz, and from there, together with us and together with all the Yidden, travels to Yerushalayim and settles in the Beis HaMikdash that will be physically in Yerushalayim. Yeah.
Why does it decided like to establish that community Jewish community in Florida especially? It's like the most democratic state, and it wasn't that Jewish. I mean, when he gave to America, all the America was like the white paper, like you could establish the shul whatever you want. So if he wanted to establish it in the most place of Klipa, like to dispel it, so for example, there is like Las Vegas and
Worst places.
Worst places, yeah. Why not, for example, the capital, where to gather all the Jews in a central place?
I mean, in a certain sense, they say that New York is the capital of the world in many ways, more than Washington, D.C. The capital is sitting in Washington, D.C., but it's more here. In fact, here's we have the United Nations. We're going to learn that Sicha, where it talks about the fact that the Free Rebbe chose to live in New York and the United Nations in New York. Obviously, it's a spiritual thing that the Free Rebbe saw that in New York, this is the spot from which we have to spread Yiddishkeit to the rest of the world. That's the only way I can understand it. You know, if you know the story of the Chumash with the Mishkan, how many places did they travel to in the Mishkan, in the Midbar? 42. So how did they travel? There was a cloud. Cloud stopped at a certain spot, and over there they set up the Mishkan till a certain time. Then the cloud lifted. It was time to move. What was in that spot? Nobody knows. So why here? So obviously there's something about each spot in the world that we don't know, and this is the spot that in the midbar. If you look at the piece of land, you see no difference between this piece of land and another piece of land. But this spot has in it something, and that's why the Mishkan had to be there for one day. Over there, it had to be for 10 days. Here, it had to be for 10 years. Here, it had to be for 5 years. So I guess there must be something spiritually about New York. And it is, to a certain extent, it is more of a central place than Washington, D.C. The whole world comes here, especially for business and everything. So it could be this is, Begashmi is that way, and Baruchni is this is the spot that could send its light to the rest of the world.
So it was 770 was the 42nd last stop by Freedom Forever. Was his like completion?
10th, the Rebbe uses the term the 10th stop. There were 10 stops from Lubavitch till we got here. This is the 10th stop when the train stopped here. So therefore, the Rebbe says we can understand the source of anybody that would participate either physically or financially in building 770 and allowing it to expand, because this is part of the preparation. This expanding 770 is not like any other project. We're going to make the shul bigger. We got more members coming. It's part of the project. Kahachana, these words are so essential. It's a preparation for the Beis Hamikdash of the future to descend and come down, and from here it'll go to Eretz Yisrael. So in other words, expanding 770 is part of the process of allowing the Shechina that's supposed to come to Yerushalayim to come down here, and from here go to Eretz Yisrael. Yeah.
Is it true that the rabbi's office was the place of abortion and he wanted to support the people like healing lives and the place of like appearing new Shabbat like from Shula?
A second, the Rebbe's place.
The 770, but especially the office part was the place like hospital where they did
Abortion, right?
abortion. That's true.
Yeah. How did they get 770? And why? The reason why they took 770 was, I think I mentioned, was because the Free Rebbe at that point was in a wheelchair, and 770 had an elevator, so it was perfect. What's the elevator doing in a residential area? It's not a big building; it's a regular building, because there was a doctor living there, and the doctor did illegal abortions. He had a little hospital, and the doctor was arrested. So he was in jail, and they had to sell the house. And that's how they bought the house. In fact, someone told me that he remembers once in the 1950s, this doctor was out of jail, and he came to see his old house, and he was beside himself, what they did to my house.
No, illegal abortion.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in 770, you can still see in the rooms, like the tiles like you have in the doctor's office. The wall has tiles on it and little cabinets for medicine. It was one of the rooms there like that.
That's so crazy. Abortion in the 1940s and 50s were not like piece of cake. They didn't have anything fancy.
And that, yeah, it wasn't not what it is today, but still, that's what it was. So what you're saying is what people say. The Rebbe never spoke about it. But people just say, oh, maybe that's why, because it was such a low thing, they have to elevate it. But I'm sure it's much deeper than that. It's no different than the fact that Hashem chose to build the Mishkan on this spot or that spot, another spot. We don't see the difference, but every spot has something spiritual about it. And this must be a central spot that from here, it can go to the rest of the world. Another thing the Rebbe connects to this is, this year was the 90th year. When the Rebbe says the 90th year, is really the Rebbe's 90th year. At this point, when the Rebbe spoke, the Rebbe was 89, and the capital Tillim, which we were saying, was Tzaddik. This capital Tillim of chapter 90 has in it the pasuk Hashem Moin Ato Yisalona B'der B'der, which basically means that this is talking about the Beis Hamikdash, and it's talking about all the shuls and all the yeshivas that are in Chutz La'aretz. And it finishes with the words, V'hi noim Hashem Elokeinu aleinu, which means that the pleasantness of Hashem should be upon us, and Maisi Yadeinu Kenaneu, and the actions or the work of our hands should be established what Hashem wants. This is talking about a story in Chumash. Rashi speaks about this in Chumash, that when they built the Mishkan, first they built the Mishkan, and then Hashem said, wait till we set it up. Then came the day to set it up. And at the end of the day, Hashem said, now take it down. And then the next day, put it up again, take it down. The next day, put it up, 7 days. The 8th day, that was the final day that they put it up. And from now on, everything is good. All the service will be permanent. What happened? They started to do the Avodah, and the Shekhinah never came down. So Aaron said to Moshe, why did you do this to me? I'm so embarrassed. I'm sure it's because of me. Because I had that part in the golden calf. So because of that, I don't have the merit that the Shekhinah should come down. And now I feel so embarrassed. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, so that I have to pray. And he said this tefillah. V'hinei Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. He said this pasuk, you'll take a look, it's in chapter 90 of Tehillim, the last pasuk. When he said these words, the Shekhinah came down, and that's when it all began. So that year, we were saying this capital of the Rebbe with this pasuk. So the Rebbe is associating, because this is the time now that the Shekhinah that's come down in the new Beis Hamikdash is coming down. It's coming down here, and from here we're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. It's interesting that there's a thing that if you blow shofar and it's not going, sometimes you blow and the sound is not coming out. So they say to say this pasuk, and then the sound will come out.
Have you tried it?
What?
Have you tried it?
No, I didn't try it. But what I did see happen was that in 1970 was the first time that they arranged what we call a hookup. In those days, it was different than today. We didn't have internet, so it was just telephone. If you ever saw the room in 770, has all the million telephones. The Rebbe would speak, and they had all these phones connected to Israel, to different countries, and they would hear the Rebbe speak. The first time they ever did that was Yud Shvat Tavshin Lamed, 1970. And the Rebbe wanted, and I was very pleased that they could hear the Farbrengen. But then the Rebbe said, and now do it the other way around. We want to hear them. So right away they tried to, somebody there, I guess, was a little bit more mechanically inclined, try to do something, and he couldn't hear any sound. So the Rebbe says, say v'hinayim, say this pasuk. It makes the sound of the shofar come out. They said the pasuk out loud, and next thing you knew, you heard a voice. Actually, who was the voice? The voice was Rabbi Gansberg, the one who used to be in the dorm. His wife was the dorm mother. He was the one, and he was just saying, L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim. Everybody's all excited. It was the first time they had a communication between the Rebbe for bringing here and in Israel. You have to understand, when the Rebbe's for bringing here at 9 o'clock at night, over there it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, let's conclude with the Rebbe's bracha. May it be the will of Hashem that even before we expand Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, you should already see the new Beis Hamikdash coming down from Shemayim, the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Why is it Shlishi? Not only because it's the third, but it also consists of 3. it includes in it all the qualities of the Mishkan, the first Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, and the third has all those qualities in it. Because naturally, there's a certain quality in the Mishkan over the Beis Hamikdash. It was built by Beis Rabeinu. There's a certain quality in the Beis Hamikdash over the Mishkan. There's a certain quality in the first over the second. There's certain qualities in the second over the first. The third one will include and contain in it all the qualities of all those three. And that'll be revealed in this shul, which is also made up of three. Which three things? Every shul is made up of three things: tefillah, davening; Beis Medrash, a place of Torah; Beis Ma'asim Tevin, a place of gemilas chasadim. Torah, avodah, gemilas chasadim. And from there we'll go back to Yerushalayim, together with all the shuls and all the yeshivas. Wow, that's going to be an interesting parade to watch. They're going all the shuls and yeshivas are going to follow 770, go to Eretz Yisrael, and they be established in Yerushalayim, connected to Beis Hamikdash, together with all the Yidden that are going to come from all corners of the world. Like it says, I will bring them all to my holy mountain. I will make them all happy in my house of prayer. This is a house of prayer for all nations of the world. Or another pasuk says, that the mountain of Hashem will be established on top of all the mountains. The Nisa Migvois will be higher than all the hills and all the mountains. The Naru Elav Kol HaGoyim, and all the Goyim will flow and stream to the Beis Hamikdash, all the nations of the world. V'holchu Amim Rabim, and many people will come, many people meaning from other nations, and they'll say, L'chu v'nayla l'har Hashem. Come, let's go to the mountain of Hashem. Of course, this is maybe a political statement. One of the people that Trump appointed as, I guess, his ambassador to Israel was a senator, or was a senator, I think. What's his name, Huckabee or something like that? Or was a governor, I think, of Arkansas. So he says, I don't see why we can't build a temple in Jerusalem. I don't see why. But basically, all this talk only means we're coming, and nobody's building temples. Chas v'shalom, Mashiach has to build a temple. But just the talk shows that the nations of the world, like it says here, will respect and be in awe of the Beis Hamikdash. I think that's part of a fulfillment of this prophecy. They're going to go to the Beis Hamikdash. V'yareinu midrachav. Mashiach will teach his ways. V'neilcha b'rachosah, will follow his paths. Like it says, Kimitzion teitzeh Torah. From Tzion, which is Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim, the Torah will come. Udvar Hashem Yerushalayim, and the words of Hashem will come from Yerushalayim. And Mashiach will teach us Torah Chadashim, the new insight in Torah will come from there, and it should be taken from Yad Mamash. Okay, so I guess the main thrust of this Sicha is about, like I said, about 770. How this is Beis Rabeinu ShebeBavel, and it's all based on the words of the Gemara. This is a Sicha that if you learn it with the footnotes, you can spend quite a few, days or weeks on it. Depends how much time you spend each time you learn. And it happens to be that the next Sicha I was going to learn was the one from Chayei Sarah, but it's also the Sicha to the Shluchim Convention, which is this week. So we'll do that on Friday, Mir Hashem, also a historic landmark Sicha. We can use that word. Okay. That's luck, everybody, in your day.
Thank you.
Tomorrow is the same schedule.
Except for the turkey. Yeah, we have the same schedule. Some students are going to be going home for Thanksgiving, but as far as classes will be the same. Yeah. Yes.
What's from you and Fred? It's from Stars.
Stars, yeah.
Yeah.